welcome. Today we have Bernie Sizer with Olmsted County, who's a probation officer, to talk to us about his job. Welcome, Bernie. How are you today?
Hey, I'm very good. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you. Can you tell us what a probation officer is and what it is you do from day to day?
Yeah, so here at Olmsted County, I'm a probation officer and I work with individuals. Very straightforward. When an individual gets in an issue as far as committing a crime, some of them are placed on probation. The court gives them a list of conditions that they want them to follow or adhere to, and then they're placed on a term of probation of up to a year, and in some cases, depending on how severe the crime, 30 years. So I work with these individuals after sentencing and trying to make sure that, one, there's basic compliance with the conditions. Two, we don't want any new criminal behavior in this situation. And three, how to support them as far as how to get off probation successfully.
And when a person's on probation, what is the time frame that they're working with you? Is it a year, 6 months? Does it vary depending on the crime?
Yeah. So depending on the individual and the list of conditions, sometimes there are specific conditions based on certain offenses. For example, if someone was drinking and driving, they would have chemical related, alcohol or drug related conditions like completing CD treatment or getting certain assessments and maintaining a period of sobriety. You would also maybe have cases where they would have to complete some electronic surveillance, kind of like so alcohol sensors where individuals blow into a device to detect alcohol, or sometimes home monitoring. Yeah, so it does depend on the case. Most individuals, I would say, are on probation where they're meeting with an agent like myself on a more regular basis, whether it be in the office or at their home. A lot of times now with COVID and we are working more remote, so it's by video conferencing, emails, and phone as well. But I would say the typical direct supervision period is probably about 6 months. A goal would be to be under a year as far as direct supervision, I think is a good rule of thumb. Where, you know, we might get into the, not to get too technical, but when you're working with a client, not only is it the offense and the conditions, but as we're advancing in what works for supervision and what works for the clients that we work with, looking at their risk areas and trying to focus on that. So again, back to the DUI, obviously if someone maintains some sobriety in that area, their risk would start going down over time. And typically those risk assessments are within a year calendar. So we try to lower their risk in the areas that maybe got them into trouble with the law. And if their risk goes lower, their chances of success in the future increase.
You said something that really sparked my interest. So you're not in an office 8 to 5 every day. You're going out to the people's homes. Is that correct sometimes?
Yeah, traditional supervision is primarily in the office. And under the COVID times right now, it's more remote even. But even during this period, there was some difficulties connecting with clients. And you know, on several occasions, we would go out to their home to try to engage with the client at their home and see what the barriers were as far as whether it's just, sometimes it's just internet connection. Not everybody has internet. I was naive to think that everyone did, but that's really not the case for everybody. Some individuals aren't as, don't even know, you know, as far as the technical, as far as being able to connect, there's some difficulties there. In other cases, individuals are struggling. They are struggling with, you know, some of the similar and same things that got them into trouble as far as their criminal standing. And so trying to get them re-engaged with us, you know, is part of reaching out to them, going to their house. So there is a piece to that. I think you do have different levels of supervision. I know they call intensive supervision would involve a lot of field work. So you're going out to their homes, you are going out to their work, you are seeing them more in the community. I think our department, when I talk about Olmsted County, we are trying to engage with clients more. And when we get that engagement, I do think you have a lot of value meeting them where they're at, as far as at their house, versus something sterile like your office. Yeah.
And how long have you been in this job?
I know I did start with Olmsted County in 2002. So just coming up on 20 years.
And what is it that keeps you doing this job? What motivates you to want to stay?
I do think one of the things that I do like with the position itself, as far as for me, is there is a lot of flexibility in your schedule. Some of that flexibility is mandated because when you're working with people, everything doesn't fit in a 8 to 5 schedule. You have your appointments, you do have your meeting times, but you also have you can't predict when a client needs your help. You can't predict when a client maybe has an issue that needs to be addressed right away, and so you do need that flexibility. But in return, I know we're able to flex our schedule. So sometimes, if I did if I did work later into the evening, or if I was meeting with a client and they can't get off work until after 5, I may work later, but then I start the day later, as far as flexing your schedule and having some of that flexibility. When I was doing those support checks, obviously a lot of that work was rolling into the evening, and you're able to flex your it is a 40-hour work week, but to have that flexibility is nice, as far as maybe getting off early when you have a family commitment, or to be honest, just want to get off on a Friday afternoon.
Yeah. And you've been there 18 years. So did you start right out of college?
Yeah, well, so actually, when I finished high school, so that actually would have been 1993 is when I finished locally here at Lourdes High School. I then went to, they called it RCTC at the time, but I went to the local 2-year college to get my 2-year degree. Full disclosure, I wasn't a good student. I had some growing pains. It was hard for me to sit down and study. So it did take me my 2-year degree actually took 4 years in college. The one takeaway with that is I didn't give up because I know with my family, the expectation was just finish school. They didn't tell me how long I could take for finishing school. So I did have some growing pains, I'll be honest about that. It wasn't the smartest road on my part. And when I say that, just as far as focusing on school and studying, I think if I had done a little bit more of that and some of the extracurricular activities, I obviously would have been done sooner, and I really didn't miss anything other than going to school for an extended period of time. But after completing RCTC with my associate's degree, then I transferred to University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. And, you would have guessed, so I'm a probation officer. I was actually pre-physical therapy at that time. So I wanted to go into the medical field. I guess part of the reason for that is at the time I was working in addition to going to school. I would also suggest to students not to work full-time, maybe take the student loan, because that does take away from your schooling. But that aside, I was working at group homes for mentally disabled, and I had no reason or motivation other than I needed a job. However, working with people, I did get a lot of satisfaction out of that, working with this population. And so as I was going through school, I continued to work there. I actually worked there for, it was almost 9 years after finishing school, and continuing there at the group homes, working for developmentally disabled and physically disabled clients. However, when I was at La Crosse, pre-physical therapy, I think I already mentioned math wasn't my strong point. And again, I think sometimes you got to be honest with yourself. And I could not make it through inorganic chemistry, which has a very high, I wouldn't have thought chemistry and science had a high component of math. Again, shows how naive I was at the time. But math is obviously very important for that. And it wasn't a strong suit. So I did have to reflect on what would work for me. You have this notion of finishing high school, finishing college, and, doing this job. And yet, I think for students watching this, you also hear how you change your mind. Well, sometimes you run into things, you got to see, you also have to look at what's practical for you. And it is still important as far as what you like. And so as I was trying to reflect on what to do, I wasn't going to be able to get a physical therapy major. I wasn't going to become a physical therapist. This grand idea of working at the Mayo Clinic. I looked at what would work, and for whatever reason, I knew I liked working with people still. And I knew I liked working with the residents that I was working at the group homes with. And so, you know, looking at, well, there's psychology, there's social work, there's sociology. I excelled in sociology. And I did see that the sociology piece would be consistent with job opportunities working with people. So I did complete my 4-year in sociology. I will say for future probation officers, sociology is okay. Criminal justice majors is typically what's accepted. And also social work degrees is in line with this occupation.
And so a 4-year degree is required to be a probation officer.
Yes, if you looked at it, if Olmsted County posted a position for a probation officer, it would look along the lines of a 4-year degree minimum in a related field. So whether it be sociology, but probably more so criminal justice major or social work. But with a 4-year degree now, they're asking for more experience, whether it be I think a minimum of at least 2 years plus your 4-year degree. There does seem to, I have a 4-year degree. I think that it is moving towards more of a master's degree in addition, as far as being able to gain, to be qualified if you don't have that initial experience. So in my case, I did have the 4-year degree, but I also worked at, I continued to work at the group homes. And as I was working at the group homes, there were some clients that were developmentally disabled, but they had also gotten in trouble with the law. So they were actually on probation, which is a challenging population as far as an individual that needs help, needs support from the community, but also gets in trouble with the community. So I was helping them as far as with their residential housing and living. And then the probation officer was working with them on their probation cases and just working together. I kind of fell into then this position opening up in probation, where I was working not only with the client at their home, but also having an impact as far as with their programming, their treatment, their success on probation. It was a good opportunity that just progressed from where I was at.
It sounds like you've really enjoyed it, being there 18 years. For a person just starting, what do you think a base pay would be for someone?
Well, current starting rate is approximately $25 an hour. It is an hourly position here at Olmsted County. In addition, I think working for Olmsted County, it is a very competitive wage. I think for corrections, working as a probation officer, that's towards the higher end of the pay scale. I won't speak specifically, but the starting rate can be much less. I think even closer to $15 in some smaller communities. But in Olmsted County, they're very competitive. By all means, one of the best place to work in Minnesota, as far as I'm concerned, right? But there are a lot of resources here, and that is reflected in the pay. So I do appreciate that, yes.
For students watching this and considering this probation as a career, what technical skills, you mentioned no math, but what do they need to go into this field?
Yeah. Well, I would encourage everyone to do well in math.
Okay.
By all means. It would have made things a lot easier for me as well. As far as, I'm sorry, technical skills, I think, you know, obviously we work with computers, we work with technology, so having that familiarity. I'm going to assume most kids will be tech savvy as far as being able to work. You know, in corrections, we work with a lot of different systems. So we have our local system that we're using for case management purposes for our clients. But then we also access at the state level systems that have individuals that are entered into the criminal justice system. And then you have different tracks, whether it be through the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, through the Department of Corrections, through statewide supervision, and CSTS. I only list those off just to give a scale as far as how in-depth the system is, the court system, Odyssey. These aren't names that you need to recognize. It's just the idea of being able to access these different systems for different information related to your clients. I would also say then, as far as any technical skills, much of the training is provided once you do start the position. So if there is anything that an individual isn't as familiar with, Olmsted County is a good place to work. I sincerely mean that. And they do provide a lot of support for employees as far as getting started on the right foot.
Perfect. What about soft skills? You mentioned communication and interpersonal skills a ton. Is there anything else, teamwork or problem solving, creativity, anything like that?
Yeah, I think more so than the technical skills, the soft skills as far as working with people does come out more so. So being able to engage with a client that maybe isn't having a good day and still being able to stay calm and be able to communicate and maintain boundaries and yet still be able to support without judging an individual. So yeah, the people skills is very important. The other piece with that is working with other individuals. When I say a person's, they're on probation, I have a client that I work with, that also means several different third parties, whether it be the courts, which for example, I mean, if you have a court hearing, you're working with the judge, you're working with the prosecutor, you're working with the defense attorney, and you're working with the client, obviously. But, to get away from that, because again, we're trying to support clients be successful. I think, that is one thing, just specifically to point out, working in corrections right now, it's an exciting time, not to get off track from your question, but, the focus isn't on punishing an individual for doing something they did wrong. I think there is a traditional view that someone breaks the law, they're going to go to jail. And, a probation officer is going to watch over them. And if they don't do what they're told, they're going to be put in jail. That's not the direction that corrections is going, at least our department. And I think, there's a lot of research coming out on working with individuals involved in the criminal justice system that reflects more of a support for an individual that maybe has made a mistake. That is maybe in a situation where, yes, there is wrong done, but how can we change that in the future? I think, when we talk about a person making a mistake, and when I say mistake, by all means, there are intentional behaviors and there is harm done to the community. I'm not minimizing that in any way. But as far as moving forward from that, if you put someone in jail and then you let them back out and they haven't learned anything, they don't see anything other than a punishment. If there isn't any skill building, if there isn't working with a client as far as thinking and making better decisions, having those conversations with the client, as far as you would hear in corrections, a lot of cognitive behavioral interventions. And some of that skill building, that's really big, and that is the direction to go. Because the most important thing after something's already been done is, how can it be done different and in a more positive fashion. So we do try to get away from punishment. We don't even like using that word. And we do focus more on skill building with the client and focus on, as far as positive incentives and again, more of a client than, offender. as far as trying to make them more successful. So, you know, back to soft skills, I think, you know, just reflecting on that does, you know, you would have to anticipate more of an interaction with the client. You would anticipate teaching and role playing and, you know, focusing on the skill building piece. So what does that mean as far as working with other professionals like treatment providers? You also have individuals with mental health. I think in corrections, you know, a lot of clients have mental health issues. Some, you know, like ADHD, others more significant. I have a couple cases where individuals are bipolar and schizophrenic. And then couple that with some of the other challenges, like either chemical use or situations where they don't know how to succeed. It is a challenge to work with, and there's a lot of different providers, whether it be social workers, treatment providers, the courts, the jails, family, and loved ones. You do wear different caps, and you have to wear those caps depending on the situation day to day. So I guess it kind of goes back to that flexibility. Not only is it in your hours, but in the work you do. And I like that a lot.
Yeah. So as a high school student that has a couple years left, what classes could they consider taking in high school that could lead them down the path of being in probation?
Yeah, I do believe, so obviously any psychology classes, any sociology classes, I would suggest, in addition to that then, I would suggest even volunteering more so. But by all means, as far as the school classes, those are probably the most in line. But in addition to the classwork, I would suggest that students volunteer or participate in some community event. And what I mean by that is whether it be through United Way or the Salvation Army, or even Boys and Girls Club. Just being out in the community, you know, unfortunately, I don't think it's fair to say, well, I won't say that. I think out in the community, working with individuals that have needs, you're going to be working with many of the clients that we end up working with. So if you do find some interest in that, and you do engage in the community with different individuals, whether it be on a volunteer basis or whatever it is that you have, if you excel in that, if it's something that you enjoy, or if you see potential in that as something you want to further pursue as far as helping out the community in general, then I think being a probation officer or looking at corrections is definitely something that you could pursue.
All right. And if a student wants to reach out to you to ask further questions or have more detailed conversations, is there an email or a phone number that you can give for them to find you?
Yes. By all means, I think there's a lot more in detail to share and expand on. I think, I know for the sake of time, you know, I probably cut myself off on maybe some of the best parts as far as when I talk about corrections and the exciting times I think that are going on right now as far as that shift and change. So I definitely would like to share more of that if anyone has interest. I can be reached, I mean, should I list my office number? I mean, by all means, a direct call, 507-328-7212 is my direct office number. I also can respond to email. It would be, well, actually, why don't I just do this? So if any kids are watching and are interested, I'm just going to hold this up and you can write any of this information down. Like I said, I think there's a lot more detail I can share. And for anyone interested, I'd be happy to do so.
All right. Thank you so much for your time today, Bernie.
All right. Hey, thank you very much.